What is good with the YouTube? It is your boy, Sean Rock to the represent Mandatory Thrive, because every day it is mandatory for us to thrive. And I am back again with another video. Before I jump into this video, have y'all head over to Amazon.com, purchase my first published book, Get Nothing Less Than 300 from the Basement, Mind, Body, and Soul. Great book, great read. Want to send a special shout out to Brian and my boy Cam, who Brian purchased my book off of Amazon, and my boy Cam purchased 2 books, and I sent them out to him. And of course, shout out to all of the people who bought my book when I've been out in the streets, going door to door, knocking door to door, selling my books. It's been a very successful week of selling. I've sold about 20 books this week, so it's been a pretty successful week because it's only been 2 days. So but anyways, I want to talk about 2 different topics, but mainly one. I want to talk about toxic positivity and toxic masculinity, and how these things has manifested themselves in my life, and the detrimental effects that they can have on you. And first, I want to talk about toxic positivity. And what toxic positivity is basically when you are in emotionally challenging situation that's like very extreme. Toxic positivity is trying to be optimistic in something that you can't really be optimistic in that situation. Like it's just difficult to do. And what this does is, what I feel like it's done for me, and what it does for most people, is it teaches us not to have emotional resilience, right? Emotional resilience in painful situations, like if a relative dies, or you lose a job, or you get into an extreme car wreck, like things in life that are so detrimental that it's hard to be positive about them in that direct situation, right? Like right at that particular moment. Now, I do think being positive and optimistic and finding resolution in it over time is a great method to utilize, but I think the initial way of viewing things this way doesn't help. And I've discovered that this is something that I've done a lot of times with different things in my life, dating back to my teenage years, right? If a close friend dies or something bad happens, I will try to have an overly optimistic view about it as a way to cope. And what I'll realize is that in due time, like those emotions go unchallenged, right? And they don't find any healthy solutions in the long run, because I'm tricking myself, right? Because in the moment of a death of a family, or a car wreck, or losing a job, or whatever those things that you experiencing, right? Like you need to be okay with those feelings and emotions, and that circumstance being valid, and accept it and embrace it. And the reason why I say this doesn't create emotional resilience, because when you're doing toxic positivity, and I'm just speaking of in relationship with myself, I'm not speaking of in relationship to friends, family, or anybody else. I'm talking about how I've processed things in my own personal mind, in my own personal life. But what you're doing is teaching yourself not to know how to deal with emotional scarring things, and you won't heal from them. You just displace it to later. but you're thinking that being optimistic is actually helping, but it's really not providing you any benefit, right? So what I've been doing lately is not trying to negate negative feelings about serious things in life that impact me, and actually addressing them. And what I've seen happen is that it's created an extreme resilience when it comes to things that happen that are really not in your control, right? Because a lot of these things, when they transpire, they're not in your control. Like, I could walk outside tomorrow, right, and get hit by a car and never be able to flip again or do calisthenics, you know. And initially what I will say is, when I think about this, is, well, I could write a book on calisthenics, right? Yeah, I can. But, and that's maybe what I'll do, and I'll be optimistic about that in the future. However, in that situation, I should be bummed and upset and hurt that I can't flip anymore, or I can't do handstands anymore because I got into a car accident. And I need to be okay with those emotions and not try to downplay or have foresight in order to suppress. And I think the reason why toxic positivity people get away with it a lot is because, let's just be honest, in my book, we live in a very highly pessimistic culture, right? Like, being pessimistic is almost viewed as normal, right? And it's just embraced and accepted, right? That's why you hear statements on the day, like I hear people speak pessimism in normal conversations every day about their age, about their family, about themselves, about their relatives, about life, about the news, about various different things. So this kind of dims the light on or overshadows the challenges that toxic positivity brings into the culture or into your own personal life, especially me. And for me, like I said, I'm growing to be more emotionally resilient when dealing with challenges. In particularly when I think about death of a loved one. I've had a lot of situations in my life where, a friend got shot, a family member died of cancer, a brother or a friend, got into a horrible accident, someone committed suicide, like various different things. And I cope with those things through toxic positivity. And then I woke up one day like, oh snaps, like I still have to deal with this. Like I still have to address this. This is still a problem within my life. So that's that. And then I'm going to flip it to a totally different mindset when it comes to toxic masculinity, because I believe toxic masculinity is way overblown in society. And a lot of the stuff that people consider toxic masculinity, I believe a lot of it is men being men, right? Men being authoritative, like men being direct, men being aggressive. I think that a lot of that scares society, even though I feel like society needs it, So there's a part of toxic masculinity that I feel is blurry, and a lot of it represents, in my book, what a man should actually be. And then there's the flip side of it, right? Some of the toxic masculinity habits that I've picked up was fighting. We don't negotiate. We don't find conflict resolution in conversation. We don't diffuse situations. If you have an issue with me and I have an issue with you, we're gonna fight. That's simple. That was a philosophy that I carried all the way up until the age 32. I'm 34 now, right? And I can say, in my lifetime, I've been in maybe 30 plus fights. In 24 of them could have been resolved. They didn't have any substance or any real valid reasons to happen, even into my late 20s. And they were caused by toxic masculinity, because if you do something that I don't like, or I do something that you don't like, we just go, right? And that's toxic, because you can't fight everybody, right? You can't deal with every issue through physical altercation. And physical altercation should be the last resort, right? It should not be the first resort. It never should be the first resort. Now, if it has to happen, then you got to be able to defend yourself, right? You have to be able to protect yourself. You got to be ready to go. You got to be on site if you got to, right? But what I'm speaking of is just an egotistical mindset. I've gotten into fights with guys, walking in the store, and I'm talking and laughing and joking, and I'm not really paying attention, and I make a mistake and trip over their foot or something. You know what I'm saying? And boom, we're fighting right there. And, toxic masculinity, right? So I think that there is elements of it that I feel like is unhealthy, that needs to be addressed, and it has to start with the person in the mirror. And for me, it's something that I've been working on, right? Because there was times in my life, even recently, where I would just walk down the street, and if I felt like somebody looked at me the wrong way, I was ready to fight, right there. There was no word said, it was just a look. That's toxic masculinity, So toxic positivity, toxic masculinity, these are challenges that we all face, and there's ways to negate and deal with them. So from a toxic positivity standpoint, I do believe that a lot of times it's well intended to be of benefit, but a lot of times it's not, right? So being optimistic to me is better than being pessimistic, but in some situations they're so challenging, you can't even call it being pessimistic or optimistic. It's just you just gotta be, you gotta be okay with feeling in that space, you know what I'm saying, and just accepting it until you move past it, versus trying to be well, is this way or that way. So that's a solution, I think, to that. And then with toxic masculinity, I do think society downplays how some of these things are just nature of men, and that they should be embraced and looked at from a more optimistic view, and not viewed as toxic masculinity. But I believe a lot of it is viewed as toxic masculinity because real masculinity in society is not really truly 100% embraced in the culture. Because if I was to be the man that I'm supposed to be, and men were supposed to be the men that they're supposed to be, it would be a lot more dominion, and it would be more dominating and not in authoritative, not in a negative way, but it may be perceived in a negative way because it's leadership, right? And whenever you're in a position of leadership, you're not going to be liked a lot. So that's my views on that. And then there's a flip side of toxic masculinity that I see be more prevalent. That was more prevalent in my life, and that's dealing with conflict, dealing with issues through physical altercation first. That's a definite sign of toxic masculinity, right? Because you got to have more tools in your toolbox than fighting, right? And then you have to, like, a fight has to be worthy, right? Like, it has to be worthy of your time. It has to be worthy of your energy. And a lot of my fights wasn't worthy of my time. And then it's like you actually cheapening your value, right? Because some people just ain't even worth it. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're not even worth putting hands on. You know what I'm saying? But toxic masculinity will put you in a position where you move like that. So, hope this video helps, man. Remember, dream big, work hard, live great, don't stop. It's your boy Sean Rock. I'm signing off. Peace.